Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakuyo, regular contributor for Buddhistdoor Global, and I'd like to welcome you to this episode of The Ordinary Buddhist. The title of today's talk is The Myth of Rugged Individualism. But before we get into that, I'll remind you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. In America, we have something that I'd like to call the myth of rugged individualism. And this is the idea that we only need ourselves, not other people, in order to be successful. And if we work hard, play by the rules, we will claw our way up the corporate ladder and we'll be successful. And while there is some truth to this, this is not something we hold to in the Buddhist framework. We focus more on the interrelationships between us and other people, and focus on interdependence between us and the rest of the world. And to explain how this works, I'd like to tell you a story about my garden. So earlier this year, I planted beans, bush bean variety, in my garden, yellow wax beans to be precise. And what bush beans are, is they're a variety of beans that grow up in a bush, and then they give off their fruit, beans in this case, all in one go. So they emit the beans, you pick them all at once, they're done for the season. This is different than indeterminate vining varieties, which grow up a trellis or up a cornstalk and emit beans little by little throughout the season. So I planted several rows of beans. Some of them were by a group of flowers, lavender, marigold, etc. And others were kind of off in the corner by themselves. And then I waited to see what would happen. And about 60 days later, the bean plants started to emit fruit. So we had the bean bush that grew, and there were flowers that developed, and then each one of those flowers emitted a beanstalk. So one flower ideally equals one beanstalk. And what I noticed is the bean plants that were next to the flowers, the marigolds and the lavenders, emitted lots of beans. And they were actually taller and healthier than their other brothers and sisters that were grown off in the corner by themselves. And as I looked more closely, I noticed the reason for this. The bean bushes that were planted next to the flowers were being pollinated by bees and wasps more regularly. So the bees would come, and they'd go into the marigolds, and they'd go into the lavender plants, and then they'd go one door over, and they'd visit the beans, and they'd pollinate those flowers, and those flowers would emit bean plants. On the other hand, the bean plants that were off in the corner by themselves didn't get that extra attention. Sure, they got some pollination from bees and the like, but not nearly as much. As a result, the harvest from those beans was a lot smaller than from the ones I mentioned earlier. So the beans were interdependent on the flowers in order to grow vegetables. Sure, they could do it on their own and they were all right, but if they had that additional support, they were even healthier, even stronger, and they emitted even more food for me and my household. For human beings, it works in much the same way. Yes, we are individuals, and if we're strong enough and smart enough, we can make it on our own. But as Buddhism teaches us, and as I saw in my garden, if we work together, if we cooperate with the people, the plants, and the animals around us, if we respect those relationships, we'll be much healthier and we'll get much farther in life than if we try to do it ourselves. Thus, in Buddhism, we say rugged individualism is a myth. Amitabha.